Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Today's film is a film called Evilspeak from 1981. That's one word, Evilspeak. It's an intriguing title. I think the poster art is even more intriguing. I remember this pretty clearly. It's a kind of futuristic looking top-down view of a guy on a computer, and he's looking up, and this guy looks like he's kind of going crazy. His hair's flying up in the air. And then there's what, upon closer examination, is some kind of goat-headed demon. And the tagline says, "Remember the little kid you used to pick on? Well, he's a big boy now." And another thing that I noticed about the cover, which I noticed as the title sequence was coming up, and that is that even though Evilspeak is one word, they do make a distinction. The evil is written in this medieval-looking font, and speak is written into what passed in the 1980s as a very futuristic kind of computery font. So what we're getting here is a mixture of the past, the evil of Satanism, with the modern day computers, at least modern day for 1981.
Right.
But you chose this movie, and I think you chose it entirely for one reason. Is that right, Craig?
Yeah. I had never heard of it, and I don't remember seeing the cover art anywhere before. But it popped up on. I frankly, I really don't remember. I was perusing one of the horror websites that I look at on a daily basis, and I don't remember if it was one of those, here's some horror movies you've never heard of, you should watch, or if it was a feature on this movie. I don't remember, but I was intrigued by it because it stars a very young Clint Howard, and I'm not like a diehard Clint Howard fan or anything like that, but the guy just brings a smile to my face. He's this goofy-looking guy, of course, brother to the insanely famous and rich Ron Howard, actor-director. And poor, I don't want to say poor Clint Howard. He's made a good career for himself. But, he's not the best-looking guy. He's probably not the most talented actor you've ever met. But whether it be due to his brother's fame or not, he's kind of established this career as an actor, and he pops up in lots and lots and lots of horror movies, especially kind of low budget horror movies. And for whatever reason, he's kind of a weird looking guy, but he has this charm about him that I don't even know how to describe. He's kind of an every guy, you kind of can relate to this guy on some level. He's not the best looking. He's kind of a dork, whatever. He stars in lots of these low budget movies. Like I think he did like Ice Cream Man, and I think that had a couple of sequels, and he's done, he pops up all over the place, but I had never seen him in something where he was so young, like he's playing a teenager in this movie. And so I was just intrigued by that. And that's why I texted you and said, we should watch this. I've never heard of it. But it's got a young Clint Howard in it, and I want to see it.
Did you ever watch the Andy Griffith Show growing up? Because he was even younger in that.
Well, I did a little bit, but I don't remember him from that at all. I remember little Ronnie Howard. He was so cute, but I don't remember Clint from that. My mom was a big fan, so we watched it sometimes, but I don't remember him.
Clinton would show up. He was just this little kid. He was even smaller than Ronnie, and he would just show up, and he never spoke. He was just always like chewing on a peanut butter sandwich. I think he'd always like just sit there and offer it to somebody. Like it's just this like cute thing that he just kind of did all the time. I was kind of a mute character on that one because apparently, at least his character was he's too young to speak, but boy is he generous with his peanut butter sandwiches. Good old Mayberry. You're right. He is not the nicest looking guy in the world, but it's weird because actually in this movie, I thought, wow, he wasn't that bad looking at this age. Like, he is a couple notches. Now, tell me if you see the resemblance. Just a couple notches lower than Matt Damon, but kind of in the same spectrum of a younger Matt Damon, like when Matt Damon was pimply and was in like a starred in Good Will Hunting. He's got that look to him.
I can see it a little bit. Yeah. I don't know. I think the reason that I like him, and especially I like him in this movie, and he's not necessarily a likable character, but certainly a sympathetic character because, I wasn't a great looking kid either. I was kind of the chubby, not great looking kid, and so you. And so I relate to this guy. It's not like he's some hideous beast, that should be set in the corner. He just looks he looks like your average kind of guy. What's funny is I have no idea how old he was in this movie, but he's playing a teenager, but he's very clearly already balding. Yeah. Which a lot of people might think, oh man, how dare they cast this guy who's already balding as a teenager. I teach high school. This happens.
You're right though.
Like I have high school seniors who clearly are going to be bald within the next 10 years. I have no idea how old he was when he made this movie, but I bought him as a high school kid. And as I was watching the movie, I just kept thinking, this is not a great movie. It's really not. It's not a good movie, but it has a certain charm to it. And I really think that when it comes down to it, that charm is Clint Howard. I don't know. I just feel like he makes, again, not a great movie, but there's something relatable about his character. And you feel for this kid. After I watched the movie, I read some reviews. One of them said, this is basically just a gender-flipped version of Carrie. And I had thought about that as I was watching it. It is reminiscent. It's about this outcast who really is basically just kind of pushed to the limit. And because of that, kind of seeks their revenge. And I see that. I also saw shades of The Omen. I think primarily because of the score. I kind of feel like that's the vibe that they were going for. And it doesn't succeed as either of those movies succeeded. But I don't know. I have a feeling. I don't know. What did you think?
The movie tries very hard, and I almost feel about it a little bit like I feel about the Monster Squad, in the sense that the Monster Squad was kind of like the Goonies, but just a little more low rent and trying hard to be the Goonies. I kind of felt like this movie, too, had a place there where it was trying really hard to be up there in a certain part of the mainstream at the time. Again, like another Carrie. In fact, maybe even a slightly more lighthearted Carrie in some ways. But it just fell flat. It was just a little too low rent in certain ways, but I couldn't tell you exactly where. And I think you're right. It just has to do with the ensemble cast. And maybe the thing that saves it, again, as you said, is Clint Howard. He's the one. Honestly, he seems to be one of the more believable characters in the film.
Yeah. I mean, he's relatable. I mean, Clint Howard plays this guy, Stanley Cooper Smith, and he is in a military academy, and we find out later that he's been orphaned and he's kind of been taken in by this military academy as kind of a charity case. He's not well liked by his peers. He's bullied. As far as plot goes, that's about it. The movie starts out with this weird. It's not a flashback, because we're coming right into it, but it's a scene clearly from the past. I couldn't figure out when or where it was supposed to be. I guess sometime in 1500s, 1520, something like that. And we see this guy, Lorenzo Esteban, who is played by Richard Mole, who I love, Bull from Night Court. Yeah. We talked about him in House. He's being vanquished from Spain. Apparently he's a priest, but he's being excommunicated from the church. And then we see him holding this black mass ceremony where he does, I don't know, he burns some stuff, and then it ends up with him decapitating this topless woman. And that's the setup. And then we jump to Clint Howard getting bullied, blah, 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 etc.
It's so like Carrie at this point because Clint Howard's just getting totally bullied on the soccer field. And then, like, the next scene is him in the showers, and he's kind of being bullied in the showers, too. Not to the extent that Carrie is, but, you know, they're pretty relentless on it. And actually, I thought this movie was really clunky, and it starts clunky this way, too, because it's just so bald on its face trying to cram information down your throat. Yeah, they're bullying him. Okay, scene 2, they're bullying him some more. Scene 3, they're bullying him, and this time the coach is getting in on it. You know, it's like,
right.
Oh, okay, come on, we get the idea. He's being bullied. And then they keep calling him welfare boy or something like that. And then the next scene is the head of the school, who is a Colonel Kincaid, who's walking with this mother that he's giving a tour of the school, which we later find out is the mother of one of these bullies named Bubba.
Right.
But he just happens to be talking to her about how
there was a time when only the sons of the right families attended our academy here, but now, due to our financial condition, we're obliged to take in welfare cases like Coopersmith.
Okay, so like this kid Coopersmith, as you go through basically as you go through the whole movie, you would think that nobody at this military academy talks about or thinks about or makes any decision that doesn't revolve around this kid.
Exactly. Like they have an active interest in hating him and persecuting him. Like, why? Like, just leave this kid alone.
I know. And the thing is, he's not like he's kind of okay, you know, it's like he deals with it. He clearly doesn't like it, but he doesn't have that same charm that Carrie had. You know, Carrie, not only is she being bullied, but she's got a really pathetic kind of personality, you know, because she's been getting it at home from her mom, and so she's just a very weak character to begin with. And so when she gets bullied, your heart just completely turns in her favor. She's just so sympathetic because she's so pathetic. Whereas this kid, you know, the other thing they keep going over and over again until, you know, we get it, is that he's an orphan. And every time they say it, it's almost like they're giving you new information, like it's that important.
Right.
Like later on, we find out that we hear that he's an orphan. Then we find out, oh, no, both of his parents died. And then a few scenes, you know, later, an hour later, we hear, yeah, both of his parents died in a car accident. And every time they keep talking about it and giving you like a little new tidbit of information, I keep thinking, okay, there's going to be something significant about his parents coming about. No, the movie is just that clunky that it feels like it's got to keep reminding you of the same stuff. And that was my problem with this movie, is that almost up until 15 minutes before the end of the film, it's the same stuff over and over and over again. And nothing really moves. He doesn't really progress at all. He doesn't even get more and more angry until the very end. I don't know. It's just...
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. You know, if we're going to compare it to Carrie, which I think you kind of have to, it's so similar. But, you know, she's very introverted and separates herself because of her upbringing. And this kid doesn't. You know, it just seems like this kid is just trying as hard as he can to go about his everyday life and trying to fit in and he's just ostracized for really no good reason. Like, oh, okay, like he's not the best soccer player, so let's brutally bully him.
Everybody plays sports here, Bubba. Colonel's orders. I guess that's another game we're going to lose, huh, Coach? Come here, Bubba. You know the Colonel's policy as well as I do. Everybody plays 2 out of every 4 quarters. Now, what the hell do you expect me to do about that, huh? Huh? However, something happened to Coopersmith, so he couldn't play.
It's not even fair. Like, and so you do feel bad for the kid. Eventually, what ends up happening, and it is clunky. Oh gosh! All right, I'm going to go off on a tangent because I wanted to ask you about this. You are the technical movie making guy. I felt like whoever, and maybe it was the director, maybe it was the screenwriting, I don't know. But I just felt like the editing was really bad. Like it seemed like just a series of scenes that did not connect well. It just didn't seem like a logical progression of plot. It was just like, here's the scene that we filmed. Okay, now let's go to another scene that we filmed. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. There wasn't a very good through line. I know that this was classified in Britain when it was first released as one of the video nasties, and so they made a lot of cuts to it, and eventually a director's cut came out, but the filmmakers have said that even that director's cut really doesn't have all of the footage that they shot. So I don't know if some of it was lost in the editing or what, but it just seems disjointed, like it doesn't follow a good through line. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I did. In a way, like, even while I was watching it, for some reason, Grease kept coming to mind. And now Grease does have a through line. You know, it's got the story of Sandy and Danny, right, as they're,
Right.
going through and kind of their love thing. But it just sort of like Grease, it feels like a series of vignettes. It's like a lot
Yeah.
of just self-contained scenes that could be jumbled in any order up until the last
Right.
15 minutes and get the same effect. So there's no real build. It's really not building towards anything. It seems to be. As it goes on, he gets punishment detail, right? There's that chaplain.
Yeah.
I hated all these characters. Not because they were just dumb characters.
Yeah.
And this chaplain was one of them. You just couldn't get a beat on this guy. There's supposed to be this military academy, and so everybody, is dressed in the military uniforms, but they don't actually make sense if you know anything about the military. The ranks, insignias, and things were just slapped on these things. And one of the things that bothered me two of the things that bothered me. First of all, everybody's hair was way too long for this to be a military academy. But second of all, the decorum completely gone. Now, I grew up in a military family, all right, and my dad was an officer and stuff. We grew up on bases. I'm pretty familiar with this stuff. I never went to a military academy, but it's a meritocracy. The military is nothing if not a meritocracy, and that's a fundamental flaw of the way that they're portraying this academy in this film. Is that people are just too petty. The top brass or the instructors in this school make all these weird threats. It's like Grease. They all have all these weird different characters. All of the instructors and whatever have all these different personality quirks. At one time, he gets called in to the Colonel Kincaid's office, who chews him out for no really good discernible reason except that he still thinks he's a pud, and then says, all right, assume the position, and he whacks him like corporal punishment. Corporal punishment for what?
Right.
And again, being a meritocracy, the way that the military works, they don't give a crap about your background. They don't care where you came from. This is just not something that's discussed or talked about much. It's just, will you do the work? Can you do the work? And they're constantly grilling you to get better and get better and get better. And so the reasons that they're harping on this kid seems to be more of the fact that they've just decided that they resent having him in the school, more so than he can't accomplish anything. You really, except for soccer, you don't see any evidence that he can't accomplish anything. Right. In fact, he seems to be a pretty good student. He goes to class, and he's in this ridiculous class with this guy. The teacher has a German accent.
Yeah.
You are late, Cooper Smith. I hope you have an unimpeachable excuse. Your silence pleases me, Cooper Smith. I would consider any excuse unacceptable, short of your being detained by visitors from outer space. I take it we can rule out extraterrestrial interference?
He's like Steve Carell with a German accent. It's hilarious.
which I guess is just their way of trying to make him seem more sinister or something. But again, it's a little off from him being at a military academy. And this class, apparently, they're going to study the strategies of Julius Caesar. But they're also, just as kind of a side thing, going to learn Latin as well. And, and also, don't forget your model projects that are due. And I'm like, model projects? Like are they mapping out model, like a battlefield? Like, no, it's like they've got to make like giant boats or like catapults and stuff. Yeah. What is this stupid class? But, that's really handy, obviously, that he learns the Latin. And, of course, it comes in at just the right moment. That's the other thing, is this is one of those cases where, as unfortunately in poorly written movies like this, things that the characters need just happen to be available to them right when they need them, and that's one of those situations.
Right. And like he's on this punishment duty. We have no idea what he's being punished for. You can't imagine that this kid would have done anything malicious to be punished for. And you're right. It makes, of course, you never necessarily expect a movie like this to represent people fairly, but not only are the military officers just jerks, but they're also stupid. Like, they're mean to this kid for no reason, but then they're also really nice to the bully kids who are very clearly making fun of them behind their backs. And like, I don't come from any kind of military background, but I can never imagine that anything like that would happen. It just doesn't make any kind of logical sense.
No.
But anyway, so he's on this punishment duty, and his duty apparently is to clean out the basement of this church on the campus. And he goes down there, and he hasn't been cleaning for more than 30 seconds before he finds a secret room like behind this wall, and he tears down this wall brick by brick, and he goes in there, and it's like this massive. I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah, it's this huge, like, kind of like dark chapel or whatever. And my favorite, I say that a lot. I have a lot of favorites, I guess. One of my favorite things about this movie is that he goes down there and he finds all this obviously like ancient stuff, and he's just like perusing through it like, ooh, this is so neat. Like, and he's
lighting candles.
That's it. Like these black wax candles. Not only does he light a candle, like, okay, all right, it's dark in there, you light a candle so maybe you can see this, pagan book that you're looking at or whatever, but he lights like hundreds of candles. And not only that, but like he lights the hundreds of candles the first times that he's in there to look at all these weird things. And there's weird things. There's like pagan books, and there's like weird like demon iconography, and there's like a fetus in a jar, and I don't even know what that was all about. But then later, like he continues going down there, and not only are there like these hundreds of candles lit, but there's like fire pits, like
it just gets
like it's a whole deal. Like it's a whole dungeon scene. It's like the end of one of the last Nightmare on Elm Streets that we talked about, when they go down into Freddy's hell, and it's like this dungeon.
New Nightmare.
That's what it's like. And he just hangs out in there.
Well, and it's like it's a different set every time. Like it's like as they filmed the movie, they kept adding to it, and they filmed it in sequence, so it's like more and more elaborate. I didn't even realize how big the room was until as the movie goes on, you're like, geez, the ceilings in here are huge. It just seems to get bigger and bigger, more elaborate. And of course, maybe it's just because the candles all stay lit the whole time. But and then how does he close it off? But he just like pushes a whiteboard in front of it.
Yeah. Nobody will find this, especially not. Apparently, there's a guy named Sarge who like lives down there. Like I don't even like. I don't even know.
Oh.
But when it comes down to it, he continues to get bullied. The bullies like break his catapult thing that he's been working on so hard, and that's really mean. And he takes this one book out of there that's got like a pentagram on it, and he's working on his catapult design on a computer. And this is hilarious because apparently the title Evilspeak is a play on the term computer speak, which I don't even remember that being a term, but I guess that was back in the early days of computers. That was like the name for computer language, I guess. But he's working on this computer, and he starts typing in things in Latin into this computer. It's like a Commodore 64 or something.
Yeah.
He types stuff from the book in, and it translates it for him. And that's another thing. There's a lot of reading.
You do have to read this movie.
If you're not a fan of reading,
That's right.
or if you can't read, you might not want to watch this movie because you won't know what's going on. But he types this stuff in, and the first thing that translates is, "I, Esteban, have come to know that the entire world is a domain of evil, ruled over by an evil spirit. And since the power that dominates the world is evil, then it follows that Satan must be God." And then it's dated 1520, and then it's like, "I, Esteban, have signed the book of death, and I have conducted a black mass, and now I will return." And I guess what we're supposed to understand is that this kid feels so powerless that he's willing to grasp on to anything that could potentially give him power, because just immediately he's like, "Yeah, Satan."
Let's explore this a little further.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so he decides he's going to get his power from Satan, and he takes the computer down. Oh gosh, and it's just so funny to watch. You know, we grew up in the 80s. I remember seeing all these weird cords and these huge clunky computers, and like he takes it and he sets it up down in his Satanist den, and it just it just moves on from there.
It becomes a part of the altar. And this is a part that I never quite understood about the movie, like the role of the computer. At first, it's like it's translating the Latin for him. But then at one point, before he takes it downstairs, he has to leave because somebody else has got to use the computer after him. You know, this is back when you had to like schedule time with the one computer that the whole school had. And so he turns off the monitor, and then after about 3 seconds, it comes back on. And then later on, when he's downstairs and he's typing stuff into it, it's not like it's translating. It's like he's able to ask it questions. So has he loaded like the satanic Bible onto it? Has he run the ritual program? It's hard to say, but anyway, the computer spits out what's basically the recipe for summoning Satan, and it kind of lists all these herbs and all these things that he needs, which are all very conveniently available in that room, which he goes...
Yeah, he just shops. He just shops in the dungeon.
Yeah. It's so weird because like the whole fact that they were learning Latin in the class, I thought then would be significant. Oh, it's going to help him translate this book. No, the computer does it. And anyway, none of this needs to be said in Latin. I guess as long as you translate it into English, the spell still works. And then he starts this spell without like 2 of the ingredients, I guess, and still thinks it's going to work. And at the end, it's like the computer can detect. So like, again, these movies from the 80s, they made it look like these home computers could do almost anything. But it's like the computer can detect the spell that's being cast in front of its monitor, because as he goes through it, it says data entry failed. You're missing 2 things. You're missing blood and a consecrated host. And so he kind of looks at the screen and is like, oh, damn, and just leaves. And it hangs there for a good hour. I mean, this is probably, 30 minutes into the movie, and every time he comes down there, he's facing that same screen, or somebody else comes down and discovers it. They look and they see the screen, too, of this unfinished ritual. And we just get a lot more scenes of him being bullied. And it's like... he was so keen on doing this ritual, he just gives up when he's got to get the 2 of the easiest things, which is go upstairs and get some consecrated host from the chapel and cut his own finger and throw a drop of blood in there. Like,
cut your finger.
Yeah, like why? And so it just fizzles out. So it's like the movie.
You're absolutely right.
It's building to this moment, right? You okay, this is going to be the beginning of Act 2. This is where the spell gets cast. Like he summons Satan. Satan possesses him or somebody, and like kind of let loose this craziness. And then they've got to all deal with it in Act 2. And then by Act 3 is like the climax where they've got to put the genie back in the bottle and something's going to happen. But no, it's just a lot more watching him being bullied for a while.
I totally agree with you. It's like it sets that up that the computer becomes kind of this computer Ouija board for him that he can kind of communicate with. And then it's like the whole second act is just totally random. Like there's that whole thing that you talked about with him getting spanked by the colonel or whoever it is. And then there's a whole deal with a sexy secretary who like gets a hold of his book and like wants to like pry the
pentagram
off the book,
like
because
for jewelry or
got
something?
a jewel in it.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah, I guess. but she can't, I guess. And then there's a whole thing with pigs. And like, I thought this was where it was like getting into Omen territory. Like,
yeah.
I really didn't even understand what the deal was. There's this whole thing with pigs. Like, I guess Clint Howard, I don't know what his name was.
Cooper Smith.
Stanley Cooper Smith. Like, I guess he has to like slop the hogs or something.
Right.
At the military academy.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
And like we get this whole scene where the sexy secretary is trying to pry off this jewel and she can't, but like that irritates the hogs, and like so the hogs attack Cooper Smith, and it leads to nothing until the hogs come back later in the movie for no reason. Oh God.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, and you're right. And then lots more bullying, blah 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 blah. We can't forget the part where later the sexy secretary gets naked and showers and then gets eaten by the hogs.
Because of course. You can't have a movie like this without somebody stepping into a shower.
Well, and I mean, why wouldn't hogs eat the sexy secretary? I mean, that makes perfect sense. So, you know, whatever. And then there's a beauty contest.
Where are these women coming from on this military academy? I do not understand. What do they do?
I don't know, but it's the Miss Heavy Artillery contest.
Oh my gosh.
And it comes out of nowhere and it doesn't make any sense. And like, you know, Cooper Smith is just taking time out of his diabolical Satan plan to like attend the Miss Heavy Artillery contest.
Yeah.
And then like he goes up to one of the girls who lost afterwards.
Miss Kelly?
You want something?
I just wanted to say, well, to tell you, I'm sorry. I thought you were the best. Out there, I thought you should have won. No, really. I thought you should have won.
You really mean that, don't you?
I do. I do.
And then the bullies bully him again.
Getting high, Cooper Dick?
Hey, leave him alone, Bubba.
Sure, I'll leave him alone. But I'm benching you for smoking dope. You can't do that. The coach says everybody gets to play. That's what sports are for, to make us well-rounded.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man. So funny. Yeah. And they oh God. And like, it's just, you know, whatever, movies or whatever, there's only so much you can do. But like these bullies, this whole group of bullies who just clearly just, you know, sulk around together all the time. You know, they pull his pants off to humiliate him, but leave him in like his giant green military boxers, I guess. Like, I don't care. I don't want to see Clint Howard's wang, but like, seriously, if these bullies were really going to be humiliating this kid, they wouldn't just be pulling off his pants and leaving him in these giant boxers.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, and then I guess leading into the third act, somewhere along the line, Cooper Smith got a dog.
He's got this whole really weird scene with the chef, right? He misses dinner, and so he goes to the mess hall by himself and has to scrape just the last bits of scrambled egg or whatever from the tray. And the chef takes pity on him and says, hey, come back here and I'll make you a steak. And so he makes a mistake and he sits down and they just have, again, another little conversation that's supposed to be, oh, I'm an orphan.
You sure your mother and father didn't send you here just to get you out of the way?
My mom and dad were killed in an automobile accident.
Should have told me sooner. I would have given you an extra lump of mashed potatoes. That's better. Finished?
Oh.
You want to see something?
I guess I just have kind of a twisted mind because I saw that going somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, I know.
God, the chef gives him a puppy. So he's got this puppy, which he keeps under like a cot in this dungeon. And I love that about movies too, like where you can just like, oh, I have a puppy. I'm just going to put it in this box for the next 3 days. Like, that's not how that works.
Well, it's the thing that he gives this nice little soliloquy about dogs and puppies. He's like,
Doesn't look like this little one's getting too much to eat. Can I have him?
What are you going to do with him?
Keep him. Try to give him a chance.
Why don't you let nature take its course?
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe this puppy's better off not making it. It's a tough world out there. You gotta be able to kick and scratch if you want to survive. I found that out right after my parents died.
no, you don't know that. You haven't been scrapping and getting by. You've been bullied this whole time. You haven't come out on top. You haven't learned anything. But yeah, take the dog. Take the dog so that you can show it a better life by sticking it in a box in this secret room in the dungeon in the dark, and then tell it if you need anything, just yell.
Yeah.
Yell for who? The man who lives in the dungeon?
Eventually, they have this confrontation with the bullies. The bully, after the beauty pageant, the bullies are like, well, we're going to hurt your dog. And he's like, don't you dare hurt my dog. I'll do something bad. But instead of going and like getting his dog or protecting his dog, he just goes to bed. And the bullies somehow magically find his evil dungeon, and they go down there and they're messing around and looking around and stuff. And the main bully, Bubba, gets a hold of the puppy and kills it. And meanwhile, while all this has been happening, the computer screen has been flashing blood and consecrated host. I don't even know if the bullies were supposed to have seen that. I have no idea. But they kill the puppy and then they leave, and then eventually Cooper Smith comes down and finds his dead puppy. And that's what leads into what I felt like could have been a really good payoff with this last scene. And then I just felt like they totally squandered it. Like,
Yeah.
So the computer says, oh no, we need human blood. So when Cooper Smith finds the puppy, he's enraged, and then the Reverend like comes down there and finds Cooper Smith, and Cooper Smith kills him. So he's got the human blood, and he's also got gotten the consecrated host.
He picks him up from the stairway, lifts him into the air, and like impales him on what must be like a hanging spiky chandelier or something. I guess
I had no idea what that was.
Superhuman strength or something.
And then you've got basically what boils down to Carrie at the prom scene. I mean, that's pretty much exactly what it is, like, except it's in a church. It's in a church, and Cooper Smith, poor sweet Clint Howard, who was obviously balding at the time, like they spike his comb over up so that it's standing about 10 inches above his head, and he floats around, and like there's all kinds of contrived things where like his face turns into the face of the evil priest for a while, and it's all insignificant and kind of stupid, but he chases these guys around the chapel, and he beheads a bunch of them with the same sword that Esteban used in the beginning, and the pigs come back, and like the pigs are chasing people through the church and eating them, and I'm like, why do they have these enormous like jungle boars at the military academy? These are not like hogs that you would have, to make bacon. Pigs are scary and dangerous, period. Domestic pigs are dangerous. But these are like jungle boars. Like, why do they have them there?
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
For free.
So the pigs eat a bunch of people, and he decapitates a bunch of people, and there's this whole big, like, slaughter. And then this has to be my biggest complaint with the movie. It's like they just quit, or like they filmed an ending that we didn't get to see, because you see this big slaughter and you see poor Stanley Cooper Smith, who you've, sympathized with because he's been bullied for this whole time, and you feel bad for this kid. And then he kills a bunch of people, and then like it just kind of fades away, and this script comes up on the screen that says, suffering from shock and catatonic withdrawal attributed to having witnessed the fiery death of his dear friends and teachers, Stanley Coopersmith, sole survivor of the tragic accident at West Andover Academy Chapel, was admitted to Sunnydale Asylum. He remains there still.
Oh, it was all based on a true story.
And then so then you see the computer again, and it flashes up, I, Stanley Coopersmith, will return. Oh man, I just felt totally cheated.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what happened, frankly, somehow, as in Carrie, Stanley probably should have tragically died, so we could have really felt really bad for him and the way that he was treated. But it was just left hanging. Like, honest to God, it was like they're like, dun 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 dun, building up, climax, the end. Like,
Yeah.
you don't get any resolution. You don't get that's my biggest complaint about the movie. Among many complaints, that is my biggest complaint, was that I felt cheated at the end. That felt like a cop-out ending.
It was a terrible ending. I felt the same way about that ending as I did at the end of Unbreakable. And also, while we're kind of ragging on it, because it's easy to do, another thing that I didn't quite get was the role of the computer in all this. Because at times it's a translator, at times it's helping along with the with the ritual. But then at other times, the computer itself seems possessed and able to project some energy. We get all these graphics on there. Maybe the scene I'm thinking about the most is right smack dab in the middle of the movie, where Sarge is drunk in the basement. He's been bitching about his crowbar being missing this whole time. He stumbles into Stanley, finds the secret hideout, finds his crowbar there, says he's been lying, finds his dog, and then picks up the dog. It's like, I'm going to teach you a lesson. He's going to snap the dog's neck, over this crowbar.
Yeah.
And at this point, the computer kind of fires up, and this pentagram goes on there, and all these crazy graphics. And then, like, the pentagram duplicates itself vertically, so I guess it's supposed to kind of look like a vertebrae, and starts turning and twisting. And it keeps cutting between this graphic on the screen, and suddenly this guy, Sarge, in life, his head starts turning around, and basically until it's complete, 180, and snaps his neck, and he falls forward. And there's another time, too, I don't remember where the computer does this same thing. So it's almost like by now the computer is already possessed by this Esteban character and is able to manifest these things. But I guess it's not enough because the ritual's not complete and nothing big happens till the end. But then again, at the end, like you said, the computer's still there. I guess it survived the burning, or
fire.
It's another one. And it now apparently is possessed by, it's supposed to be like implying that there's a cyclical nature to this, that now he's the new one.
Right.
But it's so clunky and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I really, it made me think a lot of another movie that we just talked about, Trick or Treat, where the rock star could kind of possess all of the stereos. But you're right, like it seemed at some times that the computer had power and could manipulate things on its own. I mean, it's really clunky. I feel bad because a lot of times we do these movies and we can tell you kind of interesting trivia, and there's not a whole lot of interesting trivia that I could find about this. There is a making of documentary of this movie on YouTube. This movie is on YouTube, by the way, if you want to watch it for free. But there is a making of, and I wish that I would have had the opportunity to watch it before we saw this, because I do find it interesting. And the thing is, when all is said and done, I didn't hate the movie. I thought that it had potential. It just seemed like it was poorly executed. I think that the idea is not a bad idea, and I think that it's something that could be easily modified, not necessarily a remake, but a similar idea. And again, I'm sure it's been done. There's been all kind of technology horror, but as I said in the beginning, there's some sort of charm about it, and I really think that charm is Clint Howard. And it's not that he is an Oscar-worthy actor. He's not. But there's just something relatable about him, and he's just kind of got these big puppy dog eyes that, for whatever reason, I like this guy. I feel for this guy. And even in this movie that's not a great movie, I enjoyed watching him in it. I wouldn't watch it again, but I might even recommend it to a fellow horror lover. It's weird. It's a movie that I had never heard of, that I've never seen referenced anywhere except for that one article that I read about it. But I don't know. I'm kind of glad we stumbled across it.
Yeah, I'll go one better on you. I think that even you could almost take this movie scene for scene and rework the writing and the characterization, and probably make a much better movie out of exactly the same material. If you just had the build in there, and you made it, again, so that ritual was something that kept getting added to and adding to and building, and maybe made it come a little sooner, you could have more of like a male version of Carrie in here, because I felt like I said at the very beginning, I felt like this movie was so close to that, or at least there were elements about it that made it want to be that. It just didn't succeed because the writing was so terrible.
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of scenes that didn't have any build to them, and as great as Clint's character was, as much as you felt for him, you didn't really see a breaking down of this guy. The dog, I think, was supposed to be it, but and as tragic as that is, it too felt tacked on. Like, we hadn't seen that much of the dog, by then. That by the point he's cradling it, we get like a slow dolly shot on him, hands covered in blood, cradling this dead dog. That was supposed to be really emotional, but again, as tragic as it is to see a dog killed for no good reason, you still didn't even have any build before that of his relationship with this dog. He could have been the companion kind of with him through the movie that lifted his spirits even when all the other kids were bullying him. That one little change would have made that way more powerful and would have made it, that's definitely the point where he's snapping. He's one friend of the world is gone. And then you could just kind of take it out of the chapel a little more. Like, it seems like the chapel is the only place on this campus. It's like where everybody goes all the time. He's in the chapel. People are looking for him. They find him in the chapel. He's in the cellar, and everybody knows to go down to the cellar and find him. His friend Kowalski, who, again, you thought was going to be, again, the guy that kind of comes to his aid throughout it, shows up like 3 times, and he's gone. You're right. Maybe what you said earlier about a lot of scenes being cut, maybe there was a lot cut here that we haven't seen that would have fixed some of this, now that I think about it. Because it's so disjointed. Yeah. It's so disjointed.
The only interesting bit of trivia that I was able to find was that, and I don't know, it's not like the set pieces were that cool. It could have been filmed on any studio set, but it was actually filmed in a condemned church. While they were filming it, of course, they were doing some renovations for the filming, and a priest at that church came in and believed that they were renovating the church, and I guess he fell to his knees and like cried out a thank you to God, and they just didn't even have the heart to tell him that it was just like set pieces, and they eventually ended up burning the church to the ground. So that's the only interesting piece of trivia that I have about the movie.
There was an interesting scene we didn't mention, and again, this is another point where I felt like everybody was always going back to the chapel. Another thing that it felt like they were building up to that again went nowhere was this big game that he was supposed to be able to play in, that they keep referencing and keep threatening to cut him from, which doesn't seem to matter in the end. But it comes to that point where he's supposed to show up for the game. It's after the rally the night before where the dog died. He's not there, and so they're all like, they're all in the shower room. They're getting all ready to go. And the coach comes in and says, "Where is he?" And they said, "Well, I guess he hasn't shown up." Wink, wink, wink. Coach is like, "Well, okay, I guess we'll have to punish him for that. All right, boys, I want to see you over at the chapel." So they all go to the chapel, and the priest, the chaplain, gives what I think is the finest piece of writing in this film. In case you're listening to this on a Sunday and you want a nice pep talk / sermon, I just want to leave you with this gem.
Before you go out to play the game of your lives, little soldiers, I want to talk to you about another game. The game of life. I know a lot of you soccer jocks think it's okay to go out there and try to pull one over on the referee when he's not watching. But I'm here to tell you that nobody, I mean nobody, pulls anything over on the head referee in the big game. And that's what really is important. Each time you go to the trough of sin with gluttony and lust, like pigs, you're being coached by Satan. And if you care to check the standings, he's got a losing record. When he adds up the ledger between good and evil, you better be on the winning side with the soldiers. Hell to pay.
Oh, man.
Well, thank you again for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend. You can find us on Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher, anywhere you can find your favorite podcast. You'll also find us on Facebook, where you can like us there, share us with a friend, and let us know what you think of this movie, as well as leave a request for another movie in the future. Until that time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.